James Riemsdyk was exactly what this Blue Jackets team needed to add this season. Should they bring him back for another year? I think so, but let's discuss on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. So today, we're mostly going to be talking about James Riemsdyk, what he brought to the team, like what he could still bring to the team. Should they bring him back? Will they bring him back? If they do bring him back, what could that contract look like? You know, all of that good stuff, right? I wanted to start off really quickly with a couple of current news items-ish, I guess. No, it shouldn't take too long, so we'll breeze through those, and then I want to, spend most of the episode talking about James Riemsdyk. So the first thing is, I was already planning on talking about this, is it looks like things are going in the right direction for a new contract with Dante Fabbro, which is great news. This was, I believe, first reported by Aaron Portzline, who, I don't necessarily agree with all of his reporting, but it has, you can't deny the man has his finger on the pulse of the team. He's been here for 25 years. I believe he's been here since the team started up. He knows the organization inside out. So if he says that something is happening in the organization, I tend to believe it, right? So sounds like progress is being made with Dante Fabbro. They've taken steps forward. Sounds like things have started to maybe take steps backwards or stall a little bit with Ivan Provorov. I saw a report at the weekend saying that the Rangers were potentially interested in signing Provorov. And I wonder if the organization has made their choice. And there's nothing stopping them from re-signing both guys, right? But I don't know that you want to re-sign both guys and retool the defense at the same time, So, we don't have to rehash that whole thing again. But they had to sign one of the guys. I'm glad it was Fabbro. I think he's a better fit for the team. So we'll monitor that. Obviously, nothing is said and done yet. But Portzline said on Sunday afternoon, I believe it was, that sounded like things were moving in the right direction. And then Andy Strickland on Twitter earlier today also said that he's hearing that progress has been made towards a long-term extension for Dante Fabbro. Now, long-term to John Waddell is probably not the same as long-term to many other teams, but so long-term for me suggests 3+ years, right? Obviously, Olivier got 6. I don't know that Fabbro will get 6, but, I would like to think it's going to be somewhere in the region of 5x5. I think that would be, if they have to pay another year or another million, I'd be fine with that. That to me feels like about where it's going to land, which is perfect. There's your partner for Werenski. Now figure out who's going to play with Matejchuk, and you are sorted. So that's one news item. The other news item, speaking of Werenski, they decided that the 16th of June was the perfect time to announce the first 6 players on each Olympics roster, which for a tournament that's happening 8 months away is a wild choice, but they want to draw up excitement. I get it. Elvis Merzlikins named to Latvia, which I'm unsurprised by. I believe he's the only Latvian goalie in the NHL currently. Then there's Artur Shilovs, who's playing in the AHL at the minute for the Abbotsford Canucks. Elvis was always going to be named to Latvia. For like him or hate him, think he's a good goalie or not, he's probably the best. He's the best goalie that Latvia have, right? So he was always going to get signed. It's chosen there, which is exciting. And then they named America, which was the only other one where I thought that there might be a Blue Jacket named too, because all of our best players are babies or Russians who are not appearing in the tournament. And Zach Werenski was not actually named one of the original, the first 6 players for Team USA, which is fine. Like, it's genuinely not that serious. And I feel like a lot of people got really mad about it. I think it's funny that, they had to kind of one half of Locked On Canadians, Ian Boisvert, said that they basically did, like, they couldn't get him a "sorry, our doctors almost ruined your life" card, so they had to give it to McAvoy. But what does Zach Werenski got to do to get recognition around here, right? Like, he was the best American defenseman, arguably. Finished second in Norris voting. Again, was arguably the best defenseman in the NHL, depending on who you speak to, and led the Americans in scoring at the Four Nations, and then was very good for them in the World Championships where they just won a gold medal. So again, what does the guy have to do, But like, it's genuinely not that serious. Like, I'm acting up for the bit, but he's going to be on the roster. Like, they're not going to not take Zach Werenski. I just think it's very funny that he apparently didn't make the cut for the first 6 players to be named. Anyway, shall we talk about James Van Riemsdyk? Yes, we shall. I'm asking you. It's my show. I get to decide this. James Van Riemsdyk is a UFA. He, I believe, was on a PTO. Was he on a PTO with Toronto last year? I think, and then obviously the Gaudreau situation happened. The Blue Jackets went out and had got a handful of veterans. They picked up Zach Aston-Reese on waivers. Kevin Labanc, they picked up from New Jersey. I think he was on a PTO there as well, and they hadn't converted that. James Van Riemsdyk, I believe he was on a PTO with Toronto, but signed with the Blue Jackets, 1-year deal, basically league minimum. I think it was $975K, which is about league minimum, if not exactly league minimum. And I was like, okay, this is a fine signing at the time. He's not going to move the needle, but he might be good for 10 to 15 goals, and he's been around the block, right? Like, he's a good veteran. Turns out James Van Riemsdyk has still got it. He was an up and down player in the season, but I think that's probably because he was up and down the lineup a lot. I think he really gelled with Kent Johnson. I think Kent Johnson really kind of imprinted on Van Riemsdyk, which is great. Obviously, they had Sean Monahan around for the young centers. Kent Johnson, I think, took some lessons from James Van Riemsdyk. And they played pretty well together. When Van Riemsdyk was on that second line was great. Again, bounced around the lineup a little bit. Got a bunch of healthy scratches near the end of the season, which genuinely surprised me. Because I don't know that I would have scratched James Van Riemsdyk for someone like, Luke Cunnin, necessarily, but that's what happened, right? And he played, I want to say 71 games for the Blue Jackets, 16 goals, 20 assists, 36 points. Didn't play a lot, but when he did play, he was impactful, right? Generated a lot of offense. If you are a purveyor of hockeyviz.com like I am, Micah McCurdy over there basically says that he performed like a average second line player, which is what he was. Obviously UFA. Should the Blue Jackets bring him back? This feels like an easy one to me. I do think there are some cons there, but if you want, the thing with the Blue Jackets, I feel like for so long has been they haven't had the right kind of veterans. They've always emphasized we need to get veterans. We can't just have all kids, and then they go out and get old players that don't necessarily fit what they want, right? James Van Riemsdyk, I feel like, was the perfect addition for this team. I think it says a lot about his character that he saw what happened to the team over the summer and was like, yeah, I'll sign there, knowing that he was going to walk into an extremely emotionally charged team, right? Like, similarly with Kevin Labanc, Zach Aston-Reese, I don't think had a choice in the matter, considering he's claimed off of waivers, but like, walking into this team, like, not even like a week, 2 weeks after that happened, and cementing yourself as a solid middle six player at the age of what is he, 36, I think Van Riemsdyk is right now. 36. He just turned 36 in May. So he'll be 37 at the end of next season. But that's like Brad Marchand is 37 years old, and look what he's doing on the Panthers, right? I'm not comparing these two players, but I still think Van Riemsdyk's got gas in the tank. And if he still thinks he's got gas in the tank, like, I'm inclined to believe him based on, yes, his production has started to drop off. He had 36 points this year, 38 last year, 29 the year before that. Like, he's never been a big scorer. Like, his career high is 62 points that he had in 2016, 2017 with the Leafs. He had 36 goals with the Leafs one year, which is insane. Like, we're not going to get that James Van Riemsdyk from him, but if you can get, and here's the thing, he got scratched a bunch this season as well. So, like, his 16 goals probably prorates out to 17 or 18 if you account for that. If you can get 15 to 18 goals out of James Van Riemsdyk again next year, like, to me, that feels like an easy choice to make, right? But there are some cons. I want to talk about those cons in just a second here on Locked on Blue Jackets. First, I want to tell you about wonderful pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with wonderful pistachios. They're one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller for longer. I love the no shells variety. As previously mentioned, I'm a gremlin. I love to just open the bag and pour it straight into my mouth. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, just need a quick protein boost, they are my go-to. But if you love cracking open every single shell for that satisfying crunch, if you are a fidgeter, the in-shell options are a classic favorite as well. Get snackin and get crackin with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to Locked on Blue Jackets. We've talked about like the good of James Van Riemsdyk, and I still think that there's more good than bad, right? But I want to talk about a couple of cons, and then I want to kind of look at what another contract could look like for someone like JVR. So one of the things with JVR is it's going to be him or someone else, right? So the Blue Jackets have a handful of these like older UFAs that they can't bring them all back. So James Van Riemsdyk is one of them. Sean Corrali, I think, is gone. Christian Fischer, I'll be very surprised if he's back. Kevin LeBanc, I'll be surprised if he's back. Luke Cunnin, I'll be surprised. And then Justin Danforth. So really, like, Van Riemsdyk and Danforth are the only two that I think are likely to be back. But they need, like, if you can only bring one of them back, do they bring back the guy that's been with the, like, made his NHL debut with the organization and has been a, quote unquote good warrior? Or do they bring the guy that, for my money, has a greater impact on the game? And that's not to say that I don't like Justin Danforth. I like him a whole bunch. I think he's a really great fourth line guy. I think he's a great energy guy. And I think if you put, for example, him and Luca Del Barbaloos and, like, James Malatesta potentially on a fourth line, like, that fourth line is time for the other team, right? I think that's going to be a really unpleasant line to play against. But James Van Riemsdyk over Justin Danforth, I think, is something I would do. But here's the thing. Blue Jackets have 11 forwards under contract at the minute, according to Puckpedia. However, of those 11 contracts, one of those is Jack Williams, who I assume will get sent down to the AHL basically as soon as that's allowed. Luca Del Barbaloos is a question mark to me. So you've got 9 forwards. So really, they need to add 4 guys. If we assume that Dmitry Voronkov is one of those guys, that jumps up to, what is that? I think that jumps up to 10 forwards. So they have 3 spots left. If they want to add an impact forward up top, they're going to have to do that. That drops it down to 2 spots. Is James Van Riemsdyk a 13th forward on this team? I don't think so, right? I'm just flipping through the non-roster guys to see if there's anyone that could potentially, like, be making a jump. I don't think that there is. Like again, the guys like Gavin Brindley could make a push at training camp. I'm not sure. James Malatesta is a guy that was one of the last cuts to the roster this time around, like this most recent training camp. Again, Mikhail Pucha is an RFA, so he doesn't have a contract, but he's a guy that I thought was a fine option for the bottom six for this team. So, it really is going to come down to, do you want to bring James Van Riemsdyk back, or do you want to save a space for someone like a Luca Del Belbaluz to make his impact on the team, right? And I don't think there's a wrong answer here. I don't think there's a right answer necessarily, especially because I feel like James Van Riemsdyk, if he gets re-signed, it's going to be a 1, maybe a 2-year contract. I will be very surprised if it's a 2-year contract, regardless of where he signs, right? I suspect if they bring him back, it'll be basically exactly the deal that he had last year, maybe a little bit more. So he was making $900,000 last year. That was his 1-year contract. The year before that, he was on a 1-year contract for $1 million with Boston. I would probably give him I would probably say, yeah, here's an even mil, for services rendered last year, right? But again, if you do that, is that going to take up a spot of someone like a Luca Del Belbaluz? Is it going to cut into the ice time of, guys like Mikhail Pucha? Of if, Gavin Brand, I think, is still a year away, but there's, someone like James Malatesta is an option. Someone like, I don't know that Owen Sillinger is necessarily an option, but I think that the team likes him a bunch. Obviously, they gave him his NHL debut this season. I don't think he's a competitor for Van Riemsdyk's spot, but if they want to get a little bit younger and a little bit, quote unquote grittier, then someone like Sillinger I could see being an option for them then. So James Van Riemsdyk, not the most physical guy in the world, but he does good things. If you can get 15 goals from him, that to me feels like, if you can get 15 goals from someone making less than $1 million, that feels like a win to me, right? Great in the room. Team loves him. The kids on the team seem to have really clicked with him. I don't know how the coach necessarily feels about him. Obviously, there was those healthy scratches at the end of the season there, which I feel like for a team that's struggling to score, scratching the guy that I believe finished 6th or 7th on the team in scoring was a wild choice. But hey, I'm not the coach, right? That being said, to me, this feels like a slam dunk re-sign, right? Honestly, I'd probably take both him and Justin Danforth. If I had to choose between one, I'd probably take Van Riemsdyk over Danforth, but you have the room to take both of them. And, it's very much, again, you don't know what you've got until you get to training camp, right? You don't know what you're going to get from a guy like Luca Del Belbaluz, who sure seems like he's knocking on the door, right? If he has a poor training camp, you have the freedom to send him down, and then, you don't have to scrabble to find a guy there. To me, Van Riemsdyk, I don't know, it feels like a really easy, low risk, medium reward signing, right? I don't think I would call it low risk, high reward, but you're basically risking nothing. You sign him for a year. If it doesn't work, oh well. He's your 13th forward. If you get injuries, because the Blue Jackets always get injuries, knock on wood, you throw him in the lineup and he's going to be fine, right? You don't have to call up one of the kids and play him in the bottom six. You can just throw James Van Riemsdyk basically anywhere in the lineup, if you ask me, and be okay with it. So that's kind of how I feel about that. Let's finish off by trying to nail down exactly where James Van Riemsdyk fits into this potential roster next season. If we, again, it's thought experiment day here at Locked On Blue Jackets. Let's try and map out what next year's top 12 forward situation is going to look like, and if James Van Riemsdyk fits into the role that he's probably going to have to play. So we'll do that in just a second here at Locked On Blue Jackets. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking about James Van Riemsdyk today, and how well he fits into this team, whether we would take him back. It's a resounding yes from me. I don't necessarily think, yes, there is the option that he's taking that spot from a younger player, but he feels like a real insurance type player, right? Of if he plays, great. If he's not playing, he's a good veteran to have around. And if they need him to jump in, it's the same argument that I kind of have with goaltending a little bit, right? Like if you want to get a guy to be a backup, go out and get an older guy that is, doesn't need to play every night, but can hop into the lineup and not be like a liability, right? And like James Riemsdyk is an everyday player for me on this team, or he might be. Again, we're gonna go ahead and go through the roster in a second here, but like he's just a good veteran guy that teams need, right? If he doesn't sign in Columbus, my guess is he'll sign somewhere else. Players like him almost always have somewhere to play, right? And if you want to throw a PTO at him and, again, see what you've got in training camp, sure, go for it. But looking at the roster as is, let's go through it and see if we can figure out, okay, is there a spot for Van Riemsdyk? Because I do feel like, here's the thing, I do feel like Van Riemsdyk is a middle six guy for this team, right? I don't know that he's going to be super effective on the fourth line. And he was, this is an obvious thing to say, but the higher up in the lineup he played, the more he produced, right? He's not a physical player. He's not a grinder. He's not like super defensively responsible. He creates a decent amount of offense, but he's not a defensive forward, right? He's not a shutdown guy. So if you want to play him on the bottom line, the fourth line, I don't know that that's giving him the opportunity to succeed. And I don't think it's doing the best thing for the team, right? So James Van Riemsdyk, if we look at the roster, kind of again as it stands so far, and we look at, obviously we've got Monahan and Marchenko on that top line. We've got Fantilli and Johnson on that second line. Gaps on those top two lines. If we go ahead and assume that they're going to add at least one winger, we'll go ahead and pencil one winger in there. And then you've got Boone Jenner and Dmitry Voronkov as one of your other wingers. Whichever one isn't that top winger is a third line guy. And then you've got Cole Sillinger down the middle. Mathieu Olivier is probably your other third liner. And then on the fourth line, right now it's looking like it's going to be Aston Reese and two guys, right? So, do you move Olivier down to that fourth line, sacrifice some of the scoring to potentially give him a little bit more room to run wild, potentially, and then you put Van Riemsdyk on that third line with, let's go ahead and say Sillinger and Jenner, for example. And then, you put Pucha on the fourth line, and again, maybe Del Bubbaluz. Maybe your fourth line is Aston Reese, Del Bubbaluz, Pucha, right? Is that the best situation for Van Riemsdyk? Not necessarily, because I don't know. Like, and then again, it comes down to who would you rather have on the third line, right? Would you rather have Mathieu Olivier on the third line, or would you rather have Van Riemsdyk on the third line? Now, Mathieu Olivier did have more goals than Van Riemsdyk this season. He, I believe, finished the season with 18 goals, which was hilarious and wild. And I don't think it'll happen again this season. But do you give him that chance to contribute to the offense like that and put him on the third line, or do you put him probably where he is more likely to be on again, do you build this roster like it's a playoff team, or do you just kind of put players where you think that they should go, right? Because on a contending team, Mathieu Olivier is probably a fourth liner, right? James Van Riemsdyk probably doesn't fit into the lineup on a Stanley Cup contending team. Maybe he does on a playoff contending team, which the Blue Jackets should be. But, that's the thing. Do you go, which way do you go? It's tough to figure out. Again, the Blue Jackets, I feel like, have a lot of third liners and not a lot of fourth liners to go with it, right? Like, to me, Boone Jenner is a third line player. Cole Sillinger is your 3C. If you bring back Justin Danforth, he's a third or potentially a fourth liner. I haven't even talked about Igor Chidakov. Like, I've kind of mentally traded him already, I think. But he's probably a middle six guy. Blue Jackets have a lot of middle six guys, and James Van Riemsdyk does kind of add to that logjam a little bit. Because again, I don't think he's a fourth line player. So it really comes down to, do you think that with adding a top six winger, as we assume that they're going to do, that logically is going to push all of the other left wingers down the line, right? So the top two left wingers this season, probably Voronkov and Jenner, right? For argument's sake, adding a top six winger pushes one of those guys down, which pushes James Van Riemsdyk down, which pushes, guys like Voronkov down, guys like Chinakov down. Like, there's a weird logjam in the very middle of the lineup at the minute. And I think JVR will probably add to that logjam rather than make it better. So that, to me, I think could be a reason not to re-sign him. It really depends on what they think the lineup is going to shake out to be. I do think that the Blue Jackets will get first refusal on JVR. I think it'll be a case of, I don't think he's going to sign on July 1st, right? I think it'll be, okay, probably 2 or 3 days later, the dust will settle, and I think the Blue Jackets will look at what they've got and figure out, okay, is there space for James Van Riemsdyk on this roster? I think that there probably is. Again, if it's a choice of looking at the UFAs to bring back, James Van Riemsdyk, forwards anyway, James Van Riemsdyk is probably at the top of my list. Wouldn't be mad if they brought Danforth back, but I think JVR brings exactly the right energy to this team. I think he was great value. I think he's the right kind of veteran. And he just seems like a good guy, right? He seemed like he enjoyed it in Columbus. And that's not nothing, So that's my kind of conclusion here is the Blue Jackets should absolutely bring JVR back if they can. I will understand if they don't. But if they have to bring a veteran UFA back, it should probably be James Van Riemsdyk. And that's kind of all I've got for today. Tomorrow, I think what we're going to do is take a look at another UFA. I'm not sure who yet. Maybe we'll take a look. I don't think we've looked at Brock Besser in any kind of detail yet. So maybe we'll take a look at Brock Besser. Maybe we'll take a look at someone else. Again, I don't know who. My brain has forgotten every single player that's ever existed. But that's tomorrow. We'll talk about that on Locked On Blue Jackets. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Blue Sky at JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO-Blue Jackets over on Blue Sky as well. Thank you for listening. Make it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets continues to be free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.